My name is Ethan Rivers. I am 21 years old, and on the day I graduated summa cum laude from Stanford University with a degree in computer science, my parents handed me legal disownment papers at a celebratory dinner they had insisted on hosting. They wrapped the documents in graduation paper with a bow on top, presented them in front of extended family at an expensive restaurant, and had my younger sister film my reaction so they could post my humiliation on social media for entertainment. They thought they were destroying me, cutting me off from family support and resources at the moment. I should have been celebrating my achievements. What they did not know, what none of them knew, because I had deliberately kept it secret, was that I had been financially independent for 2 years, that I had a job offer waiting from one of the biggest tech companies in the world, and that their disownment meant absolutely nothing because I had already built a life they could not touch. This is the story of how my family tried to punish me for not being who they wanted me to be, how I survived and thrived despite their cruelty, and how the moment they realized what they had thrown away was the sweetest revenge I could have imagined. I need to start by explaining how I ended up in a family that would do something so deliberately cruel, because that context matters. I was adopted when I was 3 years old by Richard and Patricia Rivers, a wealthy couple who lived in an affluent suburb of San Francisco. They already had 2 biological children. My older brother Brandon, who was 7 when I was adopted, and they would have my younger sister Melissa 2 years after I arrived. My adoption had been born out of image rather than genuine desire for another child. My mother had read an article about celebrities adopting children from difficult circumstances and decided it would be meaningful to do the same. She envisioned herself as a savior, a wealthy woman rescuing a poor orphan and giving him opportunities he would never have otherwise had. The reality of actually raising an adopted child, of treating him as equal to her biological children, turned out to be far less appealing than the fantasy. I learned the truth about my adoption when I was 8 years old, overhearing a conversation between my parents that I was not supposed to hear. My mother was on the phone with a friend, complaining about the stress of managing 3 children. "I thought adopting would be rewarding," she said, "but Ethan is just so much work. He is not like Brandon at all. Brandon is naturally athletic and charming. Ethan is quiet and awkward. I keep waiting for him to show some spark of gratitude for being rescued from foster care, but he just takes everything for granted like he deserves it." That conversation crystallized something I had always felt but could not articulate. I was not really their son. I was a project that had not turned out the way they hoped, a charity case that had failed to adequately perform the role of grateful rescued orphan. From that moment on, I understood the dynamic I was living in and adjusted my expectations accordingly. On paper, I should have been grateful. They gave me a home when I had none, sent me to good schools, provided material comfort most kids could only dream about. But the differential treatment was constant and blatant from the earliest days. When Brandon turned 6, before I was even adopted, he had a massive birthday party with a rented bounce house, a magician, and gifts that cost more than most families spend on Christmas. When I turned 6, 3 years into my adoption, my birthday was acknowledged with a small cake after dinner and one modestly priced toy. When I asked why I did not get a big party like Brandon, my mother said, "We do not need to make such a fuss every time. Besides, Brandon is older and has more friends." The excuses were always there, always plausible enough that a child could not effectively argue against them, but transparent enough that I knew the real reason. I was not as important as Brandon. Later, when Melissa came along, she became the baby of the family, the precious daughter who could do no wrong. I became the middle child nobody particularly wanted, the one who existed in the gap between the accomplished older son and the adored younger daughter. Brandon got a new car when he turned 16, a sleek BMW that my parents bought outright and registered in his name. I got a used bicycle from a garage sale when I turned 16, and my father made a speech about how learning to get places under my own power would build character. Melissa got dance lessons, horseback riding, art classes, tennis coaching, and every extracurricular activity she expressed even passing interest in. I got permission to join the free coding club at the library, which cost them nothing and required no time commitment on their part. When Brandon went to college, my parents paid his full tuition to USC, bought him a car for campus, set him up in a nice apartment, and gave him a generous monthly allowance for expenses. They visited him regularly, attended his football games, even though he barely played, showed up for parents' weekends with expensive gifts, and dinners at the best restaurants in Los Angeles. When it was my turn to apply to colleges, they sat me down and explained that they had already stretched their budget paying for Brandon and simply could not afford to fund another college education. I would need to figure out financial aid and scholarships on my own. They never visited me at Stanford, not once in 3 years. They never sent care packages or extra money for expenses. They treated my college experience as something separate from their lives, an obligation they had successfully avoided by my securing scholarships. The differential treatment extended to every aspect of family life. Brandon could stay out past curfew without consequences, rolling in at 2 or 3 in the morning smelling of alcohol and marijuana. My parents would laugh it off as boys being boys, as normal teenage experimentation. If I was 5 minutes late coming home from the library, I was grounded for a week and subjected to lectures about responsibility and respect. Melissa could talk back to our parents, roll her eyes, slam doors, throw teenage tantrums, and be indulged as emotional and spirited. If I expressed any opinion that differed from my parents' views, I was being ungrateful and disrespectful, forgetting my place as someone who should be thankful for everything they had given me. They attended every one of Brandon's football games, even when he sat on the bench for most of the season. They attended every one of Melissa's dance recitals, filming her performances and posting them on Facebook with proud parent commentary. They missed most of my academic competitions and robotics tournaments, saying they were too busy or it was not as important as their biological children's activities. When I won first place at a regional robotics competition, building a robot from scratch that could navigate an obstacle course faster and more efficiently than any other entry, I came home excited to share the news. My mother was helping Melissa pick out a dress for an upcoming dance. My father was watching a recording of Brandon's football game. Neither of them looked up from what they were doing. "That is nice, Ethan," my mother said distractedly. "Where should we go for dinner tonight?" "Melissa wants Italian." That was it. No congratulations, no interest in seeing the trophy or hearing about the competition, no acknowledgement that I had just accomplished something genuinely impressive for a 15-year-old. The message was clear. My achievements only mattered if they reflected well on the family, and since I was adopted, my accomplishments were mine alone rather than something they could take credit for. I learned early that I was second class in my own family, that my achievements did not matter as much, that my feelings were less important, that I existed on the periphery of their lives rather than at the center where Brandon and Melissa stood. But I also learned to be self-sufficient, to rely on myself rather than on family who made it clear I was disposable. I threw myself into academics and technology. If I could not have my family's approval or affection, I would have achievement. I would be so successful that they would have to acknowledge me. I taught myself to code when I was 12, building websites and apps as a hobby. I took every advanced math and science class my school offered. I competed in hackathons and won, creating programs that solved real problems. I worked part-time jobs from the moment I was legally allowed to, saving every penny because I knew I would be on my own eventually. When I was 16, I created my first commercially viable app, a study tool for high school students that helped organize assignments and track deadlines. The app was called StudyFlow, and it included features like automatic deadline reminders, study session timers, grade tracking, and integration with popular calendar apps. I built it over the course of 3 months, teaching myself iOS development through online tutorials and Stack Overflow forums, testing it obsessively to make sure every feature worked perfectly. I submitted it to the App Store and started marketing it through high school forums and social media groups. Within 2 months, it had 10,000 downloads. Within 6 months, it had 50,000 users and was being featured in education blogs and tech websites as one of the best student productivity tools available. That was when EDU Tech Solutions, a company that specialized in educational software, reached out with an acquisition offer. They wanted to buy StudyFlow outright for $25,000 and integrate it into their existing suite of educational tools. For a 16-year-old who had built the app in his bedroom, it was an incredible offer. I negotiated through email, managing to push the price up to $28,000 plus a small royalty on future sales. I signed the contracts without my parents even knowing I had created something worth buying. When I finally told them about the sale, presenting it as this major accomplishment I was proud of, their reaction was devastatingly indifferent. My father was reading the newspaper at the breakfast table. He glanced up briefly when I mentioned I had sold an app for $28,000, said, "That is nice, Ethan," and went back to reading about stock market trends. My mother was loading the dishwasher and said something about how it was good I was finding productive ways to spend my time instead of getting into trouble like some teenagers. Brandon, home from his freshman year at USC, made a joke about nerds and their computer games and asked if I could send him money for spring break. Nobody asked to see the app. Nobody asked how I had built it, or what it did, or why a company wanted to buy it. Nobody seemed to grasp that their 16-year-old son had just earned more money than many adults made in half a year. The achievement was acknowledged and immediately forgotten. Just another thing Ethan did that did not really matter to the family. That money became my foundation, my proof that I could make it without them. I deposited it in a savings account my parents did not know about, one I had opened using my school ID and social security number. I researched investments obsessively, learning about index funds and compound interest and diversification. I put most of the money into a conservative investment portfolio and kept $5,000 in easily accessible savings for emergencies. Then I started taking on freelance coding projects, building my skills and my bank account simultaneously. I found clients through online platforms like Upwork and Freelancer, offering web development and app creation services at rates competitive enough to get hired, but substantial enough to build savings. I built websites for small businesses, created inventory management systems for local stores, developed custom apps for niche markets. Every project taught me something new and added to my growing portfolio of work. By the time I was 17, I was managing multiple freelance contracts, earning anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 per month, depending on project complexity and deadlines. I worked late into the night after finishing homework, coding while my family slept, building a financial cushion that would allow me to survive without their support. My parents never asked where I was getting money for the things I needed. They seemed to assume I was just frugal with the minimal allowance they gave me, never questioning how I afforded new clothes or school supplies or college application fees. I learned to operate in stealth mode, achieving things without announcing them, building success without seeking validation from people who would not provide it anyway. When I won coding competitions, I collected the prize money and deposited it without mentioning the wins at home. When clients praised my work and referred me to others, I thanked them professionally and added the testimonials to my portfolio without sharing them with family who would not care. I created a parallel life, one where I was respected and valued for my skills that existed completely separate from my life as the unwanted adopted son. I applied to Stanford because it was one of the best computer science programs in the country, and because it was close enough to home that I could prove I did not need to leave the state to succeed. I applied for every scholarship I could find, wrote essays until my fingers cramped, asked teachers for recommendations, poured everything I had into those applications. And when Stanford accepted me with a full academic scholarship that covered tuition, I felt vindicated. I had done it myself, without my family's money or connections, purely on merit. My parents' reaction was underwhelming. Stanford is a good school, my father said, though Brandon got into USC, which has a better social scene. You will probably be too busy studying to have much fun anyway. My mother worried about the cost of room and board, making it clear they would not be contributing. Brandon said something dismissive about Stanford being full of nerds, and Tech Brothers Melissa did not care one way or the other. But I did not need their enthusiasm. I had gotten myself into Stanford, and I would get myself through it. I worked multiple jobs during college. Research assistant for the computer science department, teaching assistant for introductory coding classes, freelance projects I took on through an online platform. I lived frugally, sharing a small apartment with 3 roommates, eating ramen more nights than I want to remember, wearing the same clothes until they fell apart. But I was also thriving academically and professionally in ways my family never knew about because I stopped sharing my achievements with people who did not value them. I made the dean's list every semester. I published research papers with my professors. I won hackathons and coding competitions. I interned at major tech companies, getting hands-on experience with cutting-edge technology. And in my junior year, I created an app that would change everything. It started as a class project, an algorithm that used machine learning to optimize energy consumption in smart homes. But as I developed it further, I realized it had commercial applications beyond what I had initially imagined. I refined the code, built a user-friendly interface, tested it extensively, and then started pitching it to venture capital firms and tech companies. One of those companies was Nexus Technologies, a Fortune 500 company that specialized in smart home and IoT devices. They loved the app. They saw its potential not just as a standalone product, but as something that could be integrated into their existing ecosystem of devices. They made me an offer. They would buy the full rights to the app for $250,000, plus they wanted to hire me full-time after graduation with a starting salary of $180,000 a year, plus stock options and benefits. I was 20 years old, still in college, and I had just been offered $250,000 for my work and a 6-figure job at one of the biggest tech companies in the world. It was everything I had worked toward, validation that my skills and intelligence and hard work meant something, that I could build a successful life despite my family's lack of support. I did not tell my parents. I did not tell Brandon or Melissa. I signed the contracts, deposited the money in my investment accounts, and kept living exactly as I had been. Frugally, quietly, like a struggling college student, because I had learned that my achievements meant nothing to my family unless they could take credit for them or use them to elevate themselves. And I did not want to give them that satisfaction. I graduated in May, 3 years after starting at Stanford, because I had taken summer courses and overloaded my semesters to finish early. I graduated summa cum laude, with honors in my major, with a 3.95 GPA that put me at the top of my class. The ceremony was beautiful, held in Stanford Stadium with thousands of graduates and their families celebrating this massive accomplishment. My parents came to the graduation, along with Brandon and Melissa. They sat in the stands looking bored, checking their phones, clearly only there because it would look bad if they did not attend their son's college graduation. They did not cheer when my name was called. They did not take photos. They did not congratulate me afterward. My mother complained about the heat. My father complained about the traffic. Brandon was annoyed he had to miss a golf game. Melissa was on her phone the entire time, texting friends and posting Instagram stories that had nothing to do with my graduation. After the ceremony, my parents announced they were taking me to dinner to celebrate their treat since I was now officially a college graduate. They chose an expensive restaurant in downtown San Francisco, the kind of place with white tablecloths and a sommelier and entrees that cost more than I spent on food in a week. I should have been suspicious. My parents were not generous with me. They did not spend money on me unless there was a reason, usually a reason that served them. We met at the restaurant that evening. My parents, Brandon and his girlfriend Madison, Melissa, my aunt and uncle and cousins. About 12 people total gathered around a long table in a private dining room. It felt formal and strange. Too much ceremony for a graduation dinner when my parents had barely acknowledged my achievement. The restaurant was one of those places where they bring out amuse-bouches before you even order, and the sommelier spends 10 minutes describing the wine list. My Aunt Karen was the first to speak to me directly when I arrived, pulling me aside while others were getting seated. "Ethan, congratulations on graduating. Stanford, that is incredible. You must be so proud." "Thank you, Aunt Karen. I am proud of what I accomplished. Your parents mentioned there would be some kind of announcement tonight. Do you know what that is about?" I had no idea, but the concerned look on her face suggested she might have some inkling that whatever was coming would not be good. "No, I do not know. They just said they wanted to celebrate my graduation with family." She squeezed my arm sympathetically. "Well, whatever happens, know that Uncle Tom, and I think you are remarkable. What you have achieved, doing it mostly on your own, that takes real strength." The comment was kind, but also telling. Even my extended family had noticed the differential treatment, the way my parents provided for Brandon and Melissa while leaving me to fend for myself. But like most family members in dysfunctional systems, they noticed without intervening, sympathized without taking action. Dinner was ordered with my father selecting an expensive wine and insisting everyone try the prix-fixe menu, which would cost nearly $100 per person. The irony of my parents spending over $1,000 on a dinner to celebrate me while having refused to contribute anything to my college expenses was not lost on me. This dinner was not about celebrating me. It was about performing for extended family, showing themselves as generous and involved parents, even as they prepared to do something cruel. The food came in waves. Amuse-bouche, appetizers, soup, salad, entree, all of it beautifully presented, and probably delicious, though I barely tasted any of it. My stomach was tight with anxiety, some instinct warning me that something was very wrong with this whole situation. Melissa kept glancing at me with an expression I could not quite read, something between pity and anticipation. Brandon was smirking into his wine glass. My parents were being overly cheerful, laughing too loud at jokes that were not that funny, performing happiness. Between the salad and entree courses, my father stood up to make his toast, tapping his wine glass with a knife to get everyone's attention. The room went quiet, all eyes on him. "We are here tonight to celebrate Ethan's graduation from Stanford." My father began, his voice carrying that formal tone he used when he was about to say something he thought was important. "It is a significant milestone, the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Ethan has worked very hard to achieve this degree, and we acknowledge that effort." The word acknowledge, rather than are proud of, was telling. He was framing this as recognition of my effort rather than celebration of my accomplishment, keeping emotional distance even as he pretended to praise me. As Ethan embarks on his adult life, my father continued, Patricia and I have been thinking a great deal about what that means for our family, for our responsibilities, and for Ethan's future. We believe strongly in the importance of independence, of young people learning to stand on their own 2 feet without relying on parental support indefinitely. My mother took over, standing up next to my father with that tight, controlled smile she wore when she was about to do something she had fully justified to herself. Ethan, you are 21 now. You are educated, capable, ready to make your own way in the world. And your father and I believe it is time for you to do exactly that. Make your own way, completely independent from us. The words sounded reasonable on the surface, the kind of thing parents might say to encourage independence. But something in her tone, in the way my father was watching me with cold satisfaction, in the way Melissa was already positioning her phone to record, told me this was not going to be an encouraging speech. When we adopted you 18 years ago, my father said, reclaiming the narrative, we made a commitment to raise you, to provide for you until you reached adulthood. We have fulfilled that commitment thoroughly. You have had every advantage. Excellent schools, a safe home, opportunities that many children, especially children in the foster system, never receive. We have given you 18 years of support and resources, far more than we were legally obligated to provide. My Uncle Tom shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Aunt Karen's hand went to her mouth. They were starting to understand where this was going. And now, my mother said, her voice taking on a brightness that was completely at odds with what she was saying, we believe it is time to release you to build your own life without the expectation of continued family support. We want you to have the freedom to become whoever you want to be, without feeling obligated to maintain family connections that might constrain you. Brandon was openly grinning now. Come on, just tell him. This is taking forever. My father shot Brandon a look, but did not reprimand him. Instead, he pulled out a gift bag from under his chair, the same one my mother had mentioned earlier, decorated with graduation caps and diplomas in gold and silver. He slid it across the table toward me with a smile that did not reach his eyes. We got you a graduation gift, Ethan. Something to commemorate this transition into full independence. Every instinct I had was screaming that this was a trap, that opening this gift would reveal something designed to hurt and humiliate me. But what could I do? Walk out in front of the entire family? Refuse to open their gift and confirm what they probably already thought, that I was ungrateful and difficult? I was surrounded by family members in a public restaurant, being recorded by my sister, with no good options for escape. I took the bag and pulled out the tissue paper, revealing an official-looking document folder, the kind lawyers use for important legal papers. My hands were shaking slightly as I opened it, some part of me already knowing what I would find, but hoping I was wrong. I was not wrong. Inside were legal documents, forms I recognized from a law elective I had taken as part of my Stanford degree. Disownment papers, official legal documents that would sever all parental rights and obligations, removing me from the family legally and financially, cutting off any claim I might have to inheritance or family support, or even the family name if I chose to change mine. The papers had already been signed by my parents, their signatures notarized and official, dated from 2 weeks ago, which meant they had been planning this for a while. All the documents needed was my signature to be complete and binding. The table was silent, everyone watching to see my reaction. Melissa was still filming, probably streaming this to her social media followers in real time. My father was watching me with an expression of cold satisfaction, like he had just won something. We thought this would be the cleanest way to handle things, my mother said, her voice bright and cheerful like she was discussing party planning rather than legally disowning her son. You are an adult now, capable of supporting yourself, and frankly, We have our biological children to think about, their futures to secure. It would not be fair to them to continue dividing family resources with someone who is not actually part of our bloodline. This way, everyone knows where they stand. You are free to build your life however you choose, and we are free to focus on Brandon and Melissa without any ambiguity about your status in the family. Brandon was openly grinning now. Come on, Ethan, you had to have seen this coming. You were never really one of us anyway. This is just making it official. My aunt started to say something, but my uncle put a hand on her arm, stopping her. They were not going to intervene. No one was going to intervene. This was my family's gift to me on my graduation day. Public humiliation and official rejection, served up at an expensive restaurant for maximum dramatic effect. I looked down at the papers in my hands, at the signatures of the people who had raised me, but never really loved me, and I made a decision. I could cause a scene. I could cry or yell or storm out, giving them exactly the dramatic reaction they wanted, the evidence that I was emotional and unstable, and everything they had always implied I was. Or I could do something they would never expect. Accept it with grace and dignity, and the knowledge that their disownment meant nothing, because I had never needed them anyway. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a pen. I saw my mother's eyes light up with triumph, probably thinking I was about to break down and beg them to reconsider. Instead, I flipped to the signature page and signed my name clearly and decisively. Then I looked up at my parents and smiled. "Thank you," I said calmly. "This is actually the best graduation gift you could have given me. I appreciate you making it official." My mother's smile faltered. This was not the reaction she had expected. "You are not upset." "Why would I be upset? You are right. I am an adult. I am capable of supporting myself. I have been supporting myself for years without your help. This just saves us all the trouble of pretending we are a real family. So honestly, thank you. This clarifies things." I stood up, gathering the papers and tucking them into my jacket. "I appreciate the dinner, but I think I will skip the entrees. I have some things to take care of. Congratulations on successfully completing your parental obligation. I hope you enjoy your evening." I walked out of that restaurant with my head held high, leaving a table full of confused family members behind me. Melissa was still filming, probably confused about why her expected viral video of me breaking down was instead footage of me calmly accepting my disownment and leaving. My parents were speechless, which was satisfying in its own right. I went back to my apartment, where my roommates were having a graduation party of their own. They were my real family, the people who had supported me through college, who valued my achievements, who cared about me as a person rather than as an obligation or a disappointment. I told them what had happened, and they were appropriately outraged on my behalf. "That is insane," my roommate Jason said. "Who disowns their kid at a graduation dinner? What is wrong with them? They are narcissists who never wanted me in the first place," I said with a shrug. "But honestly, it does not matter. They did me a favor. Now I never have to pretend to care about their opinions or try to earn their approval. I am officially free. What are you going to do now?" I smiled, thinking about the job offer I had been sitting on for months, the success I had been hiding from people who would never appreciate it. Now I am going to live my life exactly the way I want to, without owing them anything, starting with my new job at Nexus Technologies. "Wait, you got a job? Where? Doing what?" I had not told anyone about the offer, not even my closest friends, because I had learned to keep my achievements private until they were fully realized. But now, officially disowned and completely independent, I could share my success with people who would actually celebrate it. I start in 2 weeks as a software engineer at Nexus Technologies. Base salary is $180,000 a year, plus benefits and stock options. And they bought an app one developed for $250,000. So I am actually doing pretty well." The room went silent, my roommates staring at me in shock. Then they erupted in congratulations and celebration, cheering and hugging me, and demanding to know why I had kept this secret for so long. I tried to explain about my family, about learning to hide my successes, but it was hard to convey years of complicated family dynamics in a simple explanation. "Who cares why you did not tell us before?" Jason said. "The point is, you are about to be a rich tech guy while your awful family thinks they threw you out with nothing. That is amazing." It was amazing, and over the next 2 weeks, as I prepared to start my new job and moved into a beautiful apartment in downtown San Francisco that I could now easily afford, I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight of trying to earn my family's approval, of hoping they would finally see my value, of pretending their rejection did not hurt, all of it lifted. They had made it official. I was not their son, and in doing so, they had freed me to fully embrace the life I had built for myself. My start date at Nexus Technologies was the Monday after my graduation. I showed up to the sleek downtown office building in business casual attire, carrying a laptop bag and a coffee, ready to begin my career at one of the most innovative tech companies in the world. The orientation was comprehensive, covering everything from company culture to health benefits to the projects I would be working on. I met my team, all of them brilliant engineers and developers who welcomed me enthusiastically, excited to have a fresh perspective from someone who had just graduated from one of the top computer science programs. My manager, a woman in her 40s, named Rachel Chun, pulled me aside after the orientation. "Ethan, I just want to say how thrilled we are to have you on the team. Your app impressed everyone in the company, from engineering to the C-suite. The CEO specifically asked to meet you at some point in your first month. He makes a point of meeting the exceptional new hires, and you definitely qualify. The CEO wants to meet me. Thomas Bradford does not make time for just anyone. The fact that he is interested in meeting you says a lot about how highly the company values your work. Just keep doing what you are doing, and I expect big things from you here." I threw myself into the job with the same intensity one had applied to everything else in my life. I worked on cutting-edge projects, collaborated with some of the brightest minds in tech, learned more in my first month than I had thought possible. I was good at my job, really good, and my contributions were noticed and valued. At a company that employed thousands of people, I was making a name for myself as an innovative thinker who could solve complex problems in elegant ways. During this time, I had zero contact with my family. They did not reach out after the Disowned dinner, which I expected. Why would they? They had made their position clear. I was no longer their concern, no longer their responsibility, no longer part of their family, and I did not reach out to them because I had nothing to say and no desire to maintain a relationship with people who had never really wanted me. But about 6 weeks after I started at Nexus, I got an email from my mother. The subject line read, "Family Update," and I almost deleted it without reading, but curiosity got the better of me. The email was brief. "Ethan, I wanted to let you know that your brother Brandon has been going through a difficult time. He lost his job last month and is struggling financially. As his parents, we are supporting him through this transition, covering his rent and expenses until he gets back on his feet. I know we are no longer obligated to help you, but if you have any extra money from whatever job you have, it would be kind of you to contribute to helping your brother. Despite everything, we are still family in some ways. Mom." I read the email 3 times, my anger building with each reading. They disowned me publicly and legally, humiliated me at my graduation dinner, made it clear I was not part of their family. And now, they wanted me to give them money to support Brandon, the golden child who had never been expected to fend for himself. The audacity was staggering. I deleted the email without responding. If they wanted to support Brandon, that was their choice. But they would not be getting a cent from me, not after what they had done. I had worked for every dollar I had. I had built my success from nothing while they actively withheld support, and now they thought I would just hand over my money to help the son they actually cared about? Absolutely not. 2 weeks after that email, I got a call from Melissa. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. She sounded stressed, which was unusual for my usually carefree sister. "Ethan, I need to ask you something. Have you been working? Do you have a job?" "Why are you asking?" "Because Mom and Dad are freaking out about money. They are covering all of Brandon's expenses, and it is putting a strain on their budget. They thought maybe you could help out since you are out of school now and probably working somewhere." The delusion was breathtaking. "Melissa, they legally disowned me 6 weeks ago. They made it very clear I am not part of the family. Why would they think I would help them with anything?" I know that was harsh, but family is family, and Brandon really needs help right now. He lost his job, and he is having trouble finding a new one, and Mom and Dad are worried about him. If you are doing okay financially, it would be nice of you to help. I am not giving them money, Melissa. They made their choice when they handed me those papers at dinner. If they are struggling financially, that is their problem to solve, not mine. God, you are so selfish. We raised you, gave you everything, and you cannot even help out when the family is in need. That is really low, Ethan. You did not raise me. You were a kid when I was adopted, and your parents did the legal minimum required of them, which they made very clear when they disowned me. I owe them nothing. Tell Mom and Dad that if they need money, they should cut back on their own expenses instead of expecting handouts from the son they threw away. I hung up and blocked Melissa's number. I was done with their manipulation, done with their double standards, done with the expectation that I should be grateful for scraps while they lavished resources on their biological children. But the real satisfaction came about 3 months into my new job, when I was invited to a company-wide meeting where CEO Thomas Bradford was going to make a major announcement about new initiatives and personnel changes. These meetings were held quarterly, huge events where the entire company would gather either in person or virtually to hear about the direction of the company and celebrate major achievements. I attended with my team, sitting in the auditorium where hundreds of employees had gathered. Thomas Bradford took the stage, a charismatic man in his 50s who had built Nexus Technologies from a small startup into a Fortune 500 company. He talked about quarterly earnings, new products in development, market expansion plans. And then he shifted to talking about innovation and the importance of nurturing young talent. "One of the things I am most proud of at Nexus," he said, "is our commitment to finding and developing exceptional talent, especially young people who are just starting their careers, but who already show remarkable innovation and creativity. This quarter, I want to highlight a few individuals who exemplify this commitment." He named several people, calling them to the stage to recognize their contributions and achievements. And then he said something that made my heart start to pound. "Our final recognition today goes to someone who is new to Nexus, but has already made a significant impact. Ethan Rivers joined us just 3 months ago as a new graduate from Stanford, and in that short time, he has contributed to 3 major projects, developed innovative solutions that saved the company significant time and resources, and created an app that we have integrated into our smart home ecosystem with tremendous success. Ethan, can you come to the stage?" I stood up in shock, my legs moving automatically while my brain tried to process what was happening. I walked to the stage where Thomas Bradford was waiting, shaking my hand and gesturing for me to stand next to him while the auditorium applauded. "Ethan represents the future of Nexus Technologies," Thomas said into the microphone. "Young, brilliant, innovative. Exactly the kind of talent we need to stay at the forefront of our industry. I am pleased to announce that we are promoting Ethan to senior software engineer effective immediately, with a substantial raise and expanded responsibilities. Congratulations, Ethan. The applause was thunderous. I shook Thomas's hand again, mumbled something about being honored and committed to the company, and made my way off the stage in a daze. A promotion after 3 months. A pay raise that would bring my salary, well, over $200,000. Public recognition from the CEO in front of the entire company. It was everything I had worked for, validation that my skills and intelligence and work ethic meant something. What I did not know at the time was that the meeting was being live-streamed on the company's website and social media channels, part of Nexus's transparency initiatives and recruitment efforts. Thousands of people watched that meeting, including apparently some of my extended family who must have been following Nexus technologies for some reason. Because the next day, I started getting calls. First from my aunt, then from a cousin, then from my mother. All of them suddenly very interested in how I was doing, and congratulations on my new job, and was not it wonderful that I was doing so well. I did not answer. I let every call go to voicemail and listened to the messages pile up. My mother, Ethan's sweetheart, I saw the announcement about your promotion. We are so proud of you. I know things have been complicated, but I hope you know we have always wanted the best for you. Call me back when you get a chance. We should have dinner to celebrate. My father, Ethan, I saw you on the Nexus live stream, working for Thomas Bradford. That is impressive. I may have been hasty with some of my decisions regarding your status in the family. We should discuss this. Call me. Brandon. Hey man, saw your big moment with the CEO. Nice job. Listen, I am still struggling to find work, and since you are apparently doing really well, I thought maybe you could help me out. Just a loan, I would pay you back. Family helps family, right? The messages were a masterclass in narcissistic manipulation. No apologies for the disownment. No acknowledgement of how badly they had treated me. Just immediate attempts to reconnect now that they knew I was successful and had money. They had thrown me away when they thought I was worthless. And now they wanted back in now that I had value. I deleted all the messages. I did not call back. I did not engage. They had made their choice, and I was not going to give them the opportunity to benefit from my success when they had done everything possible to undermine it. But they did not give up easily. Over the next few weeks, the calls and messages intensified. My mother started showing up at my apartment building, asking the doorman to call up to me. My father sent emails with subject lines like, "Important family matter," and "We need to talk." Brandon sent Venmo requests for thousands of dollars with notes like, "For your favorite brother," as if we had ever had that kind of relationship. Finally, my mother figured out where I worked and came to the Nexus offices. She somehow got past security by claiming to be my mother with an emergency, and I got a call from reception saying there was a woman downstairs who needed to speak with me urgently. I went down to the lobby, already knowing who it would be. My mother was there, dressed in expensive clothes and full makeup, looking every bit the wealthy suburban matriarch. She lit up when she saw me, rushing forward to hug me, which I stepped away from. "Ethan, thank God. I have been trying to reach you for weeks. Why have you not been returning my calls?" "Because we have nothing to discuss. You disowned me, remember? Made it official. I am not part of your family." "Oh, sweetheart, we were just trying to give you independence. We did not mean it the way you took it. You are still our son." "No, I am not. You made that very clear with legal documents that I signed. What do you want, Mom?" Her expression shifted, the warmth dropping away to reveal calculation underneath. "I want us to be a family again. I saw your promotion, heard about your success, and I realized we may have made a mistake. You have always been so capable, so intelligent. We should never have let you go like that. You did not let me go. You threw me away. There is a difference. That is not fair. We raised you, gave you opportunities. You gave me the legal minimum required of adoptive parents, which you were very clear about when you handed me disownment papers at my graduation dinner. Whatever you want now, whatever reconnection you are trying to manufacture, the answer is no. I am done. You do not get to reject me and then come crawling back when you realize I am successful. Ethan, please. Your brother is struggling. Your father and I are facing some financial difficulties. We thought since you were doing so well, you might be willing to help the family that raised you. And there it was, the real reason for the sudden interest in reconnecting. They did not actually want me back in the family. They wanted access to my money. If you are having financial difficulties, that is your problem to solve. I worked for every dollar I have. I built my career despite your lack of support, not because of anything you did. And I am not sharing my success with people who made it clear I am only valuable to them when I can provide something they want. How can you be so cruel? After everything we did for you, cruel is disowning your son at his graduation dinner for entertainment. Cruel is treating him like a second-class member of the family for 18 years. Cruel is showing up at his workplace to demand money after you have made it clear he means nothing to you. I am not being cruel, Mom. I am protecting myself from people who have hurt me repeatedly and who would do it again if it served their interests. Now, please leave before I have security escort you out. She left, but not before making a scene in the lobby about ungrateful children and wasted opportunities. Several of my coworkers witnessed it, and I had to explain to my manager that my estranged family was trying to reconnect, and I had no interest in facilitating that. If they show up again, Rachel said, let security know they are not to be allowed in. You have a right to set boundaries with family members who have mistreated you. We will support you in that. The attempts at contact continued for several more weeks, escalating in desperation as it became clear I was not going to respond. My father sent an email saying they were considering legal action to contest the disownment papers, claiming they had signed them under duress. My mother left voicemails crying about how much they missed me, how family should stick together. Brandon showed up at a restaurant where he had somehow learned I had a dinner reservation, trying to ambush me into a conversation about loaning him money. I documented everything, every email, every voicemail, every attempt at contact. I consulted with a lawyer about the disownment papers and was assured they were legally binding and irreversible without my consent. I filed reports with building security and my workplace security about the harassment, and I made it clear through every channel that I had no interest in reuniting with people who had rejected me when they thought I had nothing to offer. The harassment finally stopped about 4 months after the CEO's announcement, probably when they realized I was never going to give them money or access to my success. I heard through extended family that my parents were struggling financially, that they had overextended themselves supporting Brandon and maintaining their lifestyle, that they were downsizing their house and cutting expenses. I felt no sympathy. They had made choices, just as I had made choices, and now they were living with the consequences. Meanwhile, my life was flourishing. My promotion at Nexus came with new challenges and responsibilities that I embraced enthusiastically. I worked on high-profile projects, collaborated with brilliant colleagues, continued to innovate and create technology that made a real difference. I bought a beautiful condo in San Francisco with a view of the Bay. I traveled to conferences and tech events, building a professional network that spanned the industry. I started dating someone I met through work, a software engineer named Maya who valued intelligence and kindness and who had no idea about my complicated family history until I chose to share it. On the 1-year anniversary of my graduation, the anniversary of my disowned dinner, I took myself out to the same expensive restaurant where my parents had presented me with those papers. I made a reservation under my own name, showed up in a tailored suit that cost more than I used to spend on clothes in a year, and ordered the most expensive items on the menu. I toasted myself with a glass of wine, celebrating not just my graduation, but my survival, my success, my complete independence from people who had never deserved my loyalty. The waiter asked if I was celebrating something special, and I smiled and said yes, the best decision I had ever made. He did not need to know that the decision had been made for me, that I had been forced into independence by people who thought they were punishing me. What mattered was that I had taken that rejection and turned it into motivation, fuel for building a life that exceeded anything they could have imagined. I am Ethan Rivers. I am 22 years old now, a senior software engineer at one of the most innovative companies in the world, earning a salary that puts me in the top 5% of people my age, living a life I built entirely on my own merit and determination. My adoptive family tried to humiliate and destroy me by disowning me at my graduation dinner, filming my reaction for entertainment, cutting me off from family resources and support at the moment they thought I needed them most. What they did not know, what they could not have imagined, because they had never paid attention to my actual life, was that I had been preparing for that independence for years. I had worked since I was 16, saved money, built skills, created opportunities that had nothing to do with their support or approval. Their disownment was meant to be a punishment, a public demonstration of my worthlessness to the family. Instead, it was liberation. It freed me from the obligation to care about their opinions, to seek their approval, to pretend that their rejection hurt more than their years of differential treatment and emotional neglect. The revenge was not in rubbing my success in their faces, though I will admit that their sudden attempts to reconnect when they learned about my promotion were deeply satisfying. The revenge was in living well, in thriving without them, in proving that their assessment of my value was completely wrong. They thought I was nothing without their family name and resources. I proved that I was everything despite their lack of support. Sometimes people ask me if I regret not having a relationship with my family, if I wish things had turned out differently. The answer is complicated. Do I wish I had been raised by people who valued me for who I was rather than what I could do for them? Of course. Do I wish I had siblings who saw me as an equal rather than an obligation? Absolutely. But do I regret cutting ties with people who disowned me and only wanted me back when they realized I was successful? Not even for a second. I found my real family in the friends who supported me through college, the colleagues who value my contributions, the girlfriend who loves me for exactly who I am, the chosen family I built rather than the biological family I was adopted into. And that family, the one I chose and who chose me in return, is worth more than any connection based on obligation or DNA or legal documents. My parents thought they were teaching me a lesson when they disowned me. They thought they were showing me what it means to be truly alone, truly without family support. Instead, they taught me that I was stronger than I ever knew, that I could survive and thrive without them, that their approval was never as valuable as my own self-worth. They handed me freedom wrapped in humiliation, and I took it gratefully and built a life they could never touch. This is my story, and it is the story of anyone who has ever been rejected by family, told they are not good enough, treated as less than by the people who were supposed to love them unconditionally. Sometimes the people who raise you do not deserve your loyalty. Sometimes cutting ties with toxic family is the healthiest thing you can do. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well and refusing to let their rejection define your worth. I graduated summa cum laude from Stanford at 21. I built a successful career at a Fortune 500 company. I created technology that improves people's lives. I am financially independent and emotionally healthy and surrounded by people who actually value me. And I did all of it without the family that thought disowning me would break me. They were wrong. And every day I live my successful, happy, chosen life. I prove just how wrong they were. Thank you for listening to my story of growing up faster than I ever wanted to. I have left 2 more stories on your screen, both from young men who learned that sometimes becoming an adult does not happen at 18. It happens the moment your family needs you to be strong. Click on whichever one speaks to you. And if you want to join our community of people who understand what it is like to be forced to grow up overnight, that notification bell is waiting. Until tomorrow, remember, age is just a number, but courage defines who you really are.